Deep within the bowels of the Imperial Palace, under the Himalayan mountains on Terra, sits the Emperor of Mankind, the barely beating heart of the Imperium of Man. After being mortally wounded by his beloved son Horus at the climax of the Horus Heresy, the Emperor was placed upon the Golden Throne to preserve his life and allow him to continue to serve his subjects despite no longer being able to rule them directly. What is this arcane device that keeps the Emperor going? What was its original purpose, and what makes it so important today? Let's talk about that. Welcome back to Starhammer. The Golden Throne was an ancient device dating back to the Dark Age of technology. The Emperor discovered it buried in long-lost ruins under some Asian desert and made it a personal goal to see it restored and to discover its true nature. The nature of the throne, or at least the device the throne was constructed around, was that it was an insanely powerful psychic amplifier and a gateway into the ancient Eldari webway, a sort of side dimension, separate from the warp and real space that the Emperor had a vested interest in utilizing. Accessing the webway would prove instrumental in achieving the Emperor's goal of a unified humanity. The webway was a network of several access points scattered across the galaxy, many of them on human-settled worlds that provided instant interstellar travel between them. Before and during this time, humanity had to utilize the warp for travel and communications. The warp, being home to all sorts of eldritch horrors, was less than ideal for managing an interstellar empire, but without the webway, it was the only way faster than light travel could be achieved. I made a video discussing how warp travel works and its associated dangers, so go check that out if you want to know more. Anyway, utilizing the webway in this manner would render warp travel entirely unnecessary. As an added bonus, it would also entirely eliminate the need for psychers, navigators, astropaths, thereby significantly limiting human exposure to the corrupting forces of the warp. This would then allow the Emperor to focus his efforts on building devices known as Oculum test stations, which utilize the Emperor's deep understanding of genetics to find and eliminate the psyker gene within his subjects, further reducing the exposure of humans to the warp and its influences. But the Emperor understood that evolution would still find a way, and that if humanity eventually evolved into a more psychically potent race like the Eldari, it could do so in the safety of the webway, and without the fear of demonic possession and other influences of chaos. He believed that if he could crack the secrets of the webway, he could give humanity its best chance yet to not just survive in an uncaring galaxy, but to prosper and be fully united like never before. So the Emperor instructed the Mechanicum to begin transforming the Golden Throne into a device that would bring all these lofty goals to fruition. The throne was built around the device as it found its home in the Emperor's lab on Terra. Beneath it, two massive golden doors served as the literal front door to the secrets of the webway that could prove to be humanity's salvation. The throne is linked to the portal below by a massive web of cables and wires, and resides in this absolutely massive space that could hold thousands of people at any given time. And indeed it did, as thousands of tech priests and tithe workers labored away at the massive project set before them. However, in order to power the portal into the webway, an immensely powerful psyker had to sit on the throne and power it. The Emperor did this when he could, but it's speculated that Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns, was meant to fulfill this role later on so that the Emperor could return to governing the Imperium. The other issue is that the webway had been constructed of some unknown psychic material that humans didn't have the means to replicate. This material helped the webway maintain its independence from the warp, and the newly constructed portal that the Emperor had didn't have the same protections. So the Emperor used his own psychic might, amplified by the Golden Throne, to secure this new entry point. As you've probably pieced together by now, this would eventually require the Emperor to always be on the throne to provide protection. This would mean that he would have to step away from the Great Crusade, and it was one of the key factors in the decision to make Horus the War Master to prosecute the Crusade in his stead. Furthermore, the Emperor knew that his Imperial Webway project posed a direct threat to the Navis Nobilite and their dominion of Imperial logistics, as well as Chaos's ability to influence humanity for its own ends. As such, the Emperor kept the project secret from everyone not directly involved, including the Primarchs and his own regent, Malcador the Sigillite. It was about 200 years into the Great Crusade that the Emperor decided it was time to take a step back and dedicate himself fully to the Webway project. In doing so, he named Horus Warmaster, Malcador's Imperial Regent that would rule in his absence, and established the Council Terra. This move didn't go over well with the Primarchs. Not only was the Emperor seemingly abandoning his crusade, as he didn't tell the Primarchs what he was doing or why he was doing it, but he was also leaving a council mostly made up of mortals to run the Imperium in his stead. Several of the Primarchs felt personally scorned by the Emperor for not being granted a seat on that council, and to add insult to injury, Horus was declared commander-in-chief of all Imperial forces. But even Horus wasn't immune to those feelings. While he embraced his new role, he too felt abandoned and betrayed by his father. The Chaos Gods later exploited all of this when Horus and 8 of his brothers ignited a civil war to overthrow the Emperor. Eventually, Malcador and Imperial Fist Primarch Rogal Dorn were finally granted an audience with the Emperor. There, the Emperor explained the goals of his Webway project and stressed the importance of achieving them and why he had to leave the front lines to see to it. This new section of the Webway required the Emperor's potent psychic abilities to stay protected from incursions of the warp, since it wasn't made of the same stuff of the original. At first, this only required a small amount of his power, but as time went on and construction became more demanding, it also demanded more of his power to protect it. As the Chaos Gods became aware of the Emperor's plan, they turned to Magnus the Red. Magnus was the second most powerful Psyker in existence, and they showed him a vision of the horrors that Horus would wreak upon the Imperium, leading the naive and ever-loyal Magnus to take drastic action. Not long before this, the Emperor banned the use of psychic powers within the Astartes, including by Magnus. However, Magnus figured it would take too long for his warning of Horus's betrayal to reach the Emperor through sanctioned means. With the help of his top sorcerers, Magnus projected a psychic call through the warp directly to the Emperor. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and unfortunately, Magnus's plan proved disastrous. His powerful psychic call did reach the Emperor, but only after it inadvertently smashed through his psychic barriers protecting the lab and new section of the Webway. In doing so, Magnus gave the forces of chaos the break they needed, and demons stormed the Imperial Webway. The Custodian Guard, the Emperor, and the Sisters of Silence all mounted a desperate defense in order to keep the demons from invading the Imperial Palace. While the defenders fought valiantly, the demons had an advantage in numbers and kept pushing them back to the portal. Within days, their backs were against the theoretical wall. The Emperor drew upon his incredible psychic powers and kept the demons back while his forces retreated through the portal and into the safety of the palace. When everyone was evacuated, the doors to the portal were closed and would remain so for as long as the Emperor could sit on the Golden Throne. And so, the Emperor was forced to stay on the throne, or risk losing Terra to the Chaos Gods. Ever resourceful, the Emperor had the Primarch of the Salamanders, Vulcan, come to the Sanctum and install a dead man switch upon the device. Should the throne ever be vacant, this switch would destroy the Webway device and the entire world, thereby depriving the ruinous powers of the corruption of the heart of humanity. As the Horus heresy raged on and the traitor Astartes assaulted Terra in the Imperial Palace, time was of the essence for both Horus and the Emperor. Loyalist reinforcements were inbound to Terra, and Horus had to finish what he started before they arrived. So, he needed to face the Emperor one-on-one. The Emperor knew he would have to face his favorite son eventually, and then he had to be ready when the moment arrived. To that end, he called upon his longtime friend and right-hand man, Malcador, to sit on the Golden Throne in his stead. While Malcador was an ancient and immensely powerful Psyker like Magnus the Red, he was still but a man. The effort he would have to expend to keep the Webway shut would eventually kill him, but he answered the call without question. And so the Emperor, along with Sanguinius and Rogal Dorn, teleported themselves to Horus's flagship to engage the corrupted War Master in a battle that would decide the fate of humanity. While the Emperor emerged victorious, it was not without suffering great loss. Primarch of the Blood Angels, Sanguinius, had perished at Horus's hand. Thousands upon thousands of loyalist space marines and untold numbers of civilians perished during the siege, and the Emperor himself was left mortally wounded. The Emperor was barely able to tell Dorn to bring him to the Golden Throne, as that was the only device capable of saving him. As they did, they found Malcador to be a husk, his body nearly annihilated by the psychic energy he had to maintain, and the destructive thrash of the collapsing wards keeping the Webway closed. As the tech priest began to modify the Golden Throne into a life support device, Malcador used the last ounce of his energy to keep the Emperor alive while the two were exchanged. With that, the Emperor awoke briefly, and Malcador was reduced to dust on the palace floor. Speaking with Rogal Dorn and the White Scars Primarch Jagatai Khan, the Emperor issued a grim proclamation that he would forever be confined to the device, and that he would never physically heal from the wounds inflicted upon him. After he had spoken final instructions to his sons, the Emperor fell silent, and would remain so for the next 10,000 years. At the behest of Rogal Dorn, further modifications were made by the Adeptus Mechanicus to keep the Emperor alive. As the years went on, the upkeep of this ancient device proved more and more difficult. As the powers of chaos grew, so too would the Emperor's. But 1,000 human psychers needed to be sacrificed daily to the Emperor on the throne, their psychic energies fueling him and allowing him to keep the Webway portal closed and the light of the Astronomicon lit to allow interstellar travel. In the 41st millennium, it is said that 4,000 psychers are now needed to keep the throne in optimal power levels. The attending tech priests have revealed a horrible truth. The Golden Throne is ancient beyond measure, and like all technology, will begin to break down as it ages. At this point, tech priests have exhausted their immense knowledge to keep the throne running, and the Emperor and the Imperium are in danger of falling. The agents of the Emperor are scouring the galaxy for any knowledge that might save their dying empire and ruler. The clock is ticking, and they're almost out of time. That's it for this one, y'all. A little peek behind the curtain of the mysterious Imperial Palace and the decaying Emperor trapped within it. Do you think the Imperium will ever be able to repair the Emperor's life support systems? Or is the Emperor and humanity doomed to die? Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, drop a like if you like it, a subscribe if you really liked it, and check out my community tab for shitposts and shenanigans. I'll see y'all in the next one. Toodles.